So if we could please have everybody stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a approval for the agenda for tonight's meeting? Okay, motion by Kip. Got a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Same side. Approval for the minutes for the April 2019 DAP meeting. Okay, motion by Dave, second by Dalton. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. We're going to go on the staff reports, but we're going to have library go first. Since there is a possibility of inclement weather tonight, we're going to go ahead and have Robin come up and give the library report, but we also kind of want to do some housekeeping issues and let everybody know in case there was an emergency what we'll need to do.
Okay, actually it'd be really easy. This is the library storm shelter. So we will evacuate the rest of the library into this room in case the sirens go off and we need to take shelter. So
Glad we got that taken care of, so everybody just stay seated, I guess.
So anybody is welcome to leave, but if you stay in the library, you have to come in here. So,
Okay.
And then as far as the library report goes, later this month, our summer reading program begins on May 28th. This year's theme is the Universe of Stories. We've got lots of fun events planned all the way through the end of July. Children from birth through grades 12 are eligible. I've got guides for the events on the back table, so you're welcome to grab one of those on your way out. Consumer Credit Counseling Service will be here at Alfred on Thursday, May 23rd at 6:30 for a presentation on saving money on everyday costs. We've had a lot of interest in these financial classes and expect a great turnout. We do ask you that you register for the event just because our space is limited, but the session is free. And then all Wichita Public Library locations will be closed on Sundays through the summer months starting on May 26th, which is Memorial Day weekend. And then we will also be closed on Monday, May 27th for the holiday.
Anyone have any questions on the library? All right, thanks a lot, Robin.
Thank you.
Fire, we'll go ahead and take the update from you guys.
Well, it was a good thing. Just walk around. District 4 in April, a total of 445 calls, 370 of them were medical. Fires investigated by the investigation unit was just 2. There was a total of 14 fires in the city investigated. In April, only 2 of them were in District 4. Some of you may have seen the one in the 2000 block of South Hoover. That was a big pole barn. That happened on April 14th. You can see it from quite a ways away. Pretty much burned it to the ground. And one on the 600 block of West Maple. That was the only 2 fires in District 4. I had a question for you.
Okay.
How's fire ops?
Good, and I wanted to thank you guys for giving up your Saturdays there that way, and letting us participate in that. I participated in the Fire Ops 101 Saturday, where you kind of go through some of the drills. Some of the drills I was involved with was running the Jaws of Life, to where you actually have to go through there, and quite a bit going on, and you start thinking about, you're trying to open the door or a hood or something on a car to get to an occupant. You got to have another person that's talking to them and keeping them calm. And we actually went into a fire. I went through twice. I didn't like it so much. I went in on the first hose with 3 people, and there was another opportunity for me to go back in again. So that was really. I'm still trying to get the smoke smell out of my clothes. Yeah. You guys got any secrets for that?
Car wash for the gear. I go to the car wash, hang it up.
Well, it was a great opportunity. I really appreciate anybody that participated in
I
that.
enjoy it, making applications.
It definitely opens your eyes up to a lot of things that you don't think about at the time when going through there. It was a relatively cool day. I can only imagine doing that in the summer. So I slept like a baby, so thank you guys for that.
Anything else?
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Go ahead and go with police. Becky, how's this Facebook Live? Are we Facebook Live tonight?
We are.
Where's that off of?
No,
Off your computer?
right here,
Okay.
facing the podium.
And is that on our District 4 page? or
Yes,
city page,
it's
or-
on our Wichita District 4 Facebook Live page. So, Vicki, you're up.
All right. Walter Kern, I'm 24-week coordinator at Control South. Some stats from the month of April for DAC 4. We had 71 largely from autos, 38 stolen vehicles, 36 Resbergs, and 2 commercial robberies. We have had an increase in stolen tags from vehicles. We've had several on South that we just discovered today. So that is about it for stat-wise. Any questions?
Any questions?
And you guys are easy to.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nobody from West, just South. Okay. All right. We'll move along to the public agenda. And do we have a representative from Tobacco Free Wichita here? Please state your name, address.
Hello, I'm Kim Neufeld, 1650 South Glendale, Wichita, Kansas.
Elena DeBora, same address as her.
We're with Tobacco Free Wichita Coalition. Some of you might know me from Bike Walk Wichita. I do a lot with that. And first of all, I want to say thank you for the Pawnee Prairie Park improvements. They're amazing. We're so excited. We had a walk down there, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
The
I see
ribbon
you guys
cutting,
out
saw-
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had like 75 people. It was a crazy windy day. And so that kept people away. But when they got down in the park, they were like, oh, we didn't realize how sheltered it is in the nature. So I want to say thank you. I think you have done a really good job at balancing out that park. And I know there's been a lot of work that went into it for a couple of years. So first of all, I want to say thank you to that. And that also kind of brings us around to what we want to talk about tonight, tobacco-free parks. I know even Pawnee Prairie Park, you have had a fire that they were saying was probably careless smoking. And a lot of cities across Kansas, 33 about now, and across the U.S. are enacting tobacco-free parks policies for several reasons. First of all, we are doing, here especially in Wichita, putting in lots of money and improvements in all of our parks across the city, and so we want to definitely see them being utilized more, trying to increase that. But also, we feel like parks should be a safe, healthy place for all our residents to use. And on our Tobacco Free Wichita Coalition, we have a lot of parents who definitely have kids that either have asthma, breathing issues, immune issues, and we also have a lot of elderly people on our coalition also who suffer from a lot of medical conditions, and they talk about the issue with going out to the parks. And especially, unfortunately, people like to sit or hang out around the playgrounds, especially when they smoke or use tobacco, and so that definitely causes an interference. So we are proposing that the city adopt an ordinance here in Wichita. And we have been working on this for about 2.5 years. We've actually talked to, I think we're about around 1,500 residents now at all different community events trying to get community engagement. Actually, this ordinance was proposed by residents about 3 or 4 years ago when we held community conversations. So the idea actually stemmed from residents, and we are just kind of putting it into action. I'm sure most of you know that there is no safe level of secondhand smoke. A lot of people even say, well, outdoors, it just goes straight up. Well, if you can smell it, then it's actually you are breathing it. And we know the Surgeon General has said there's no safe level. So that's what we're concerned about. We also do include the e-cigarette products because for several reasons. One, you can smell those as well. And there's secondhand vape, which has been shown to also include carcinogens, heavy metals. So that's not safe. But part of the reason we really want to do this is for our youth. We're trying to end tobacco addiction, hopefully, in this next generation. And so really just the image and the social norm of seeing people use tobacco, we're trying to reduce that and kind of align our park policies with our school properties and facilities. So that's part of the reason. Cigarette litter is the #1 littered item. And so we went out in Wichita And actually, I'll let Elena just mention really briefly what they did, just to do an example. We've given you a handout that has the results.
So I am the youth coordinator with Tobacco Free Wichita, and I lead the group Resist. Resist is statewide, and we have a local chapter that fights big tobacco, that wants to take this tobacco out of the park. So they're leading this initiative. So what we and the youth did, and some of the volunteers, is we went into and partnered with Mayor's Youth Council. So we had some youth from Mayor's Youth Council that are in Resist too. Is what we did in the handout you'll see. We did an environmental scan. So the flags that you see there is where we have been finding tobacco. The little orange flags represent where parents, where visitors have been smoking and putting this tobacco litter. So we have our little ones inside of it. OJ Watson has been one of our shocking ones. We've cleaned it 2017, and we found 285 in an hour that our youth have cleaned that up.
Right around the playground especially.
20 feet or less from the playground. Very concentrated around that border. So a year later, we come back after we cleaned it up, and we found over 400 pieces of tobacco litter after we cleaned it up. And the one that was shocking was Southview, and that one we found over 100 cigarette butts in 15 minutes when we had cleaned it up. And right across from there is a child care center from 0 to 5, and some of those littles go over there and play in that playground.
So that's what we're really concerned about is the litter, the tobacco litter that the children, the pets pick up. Also, you notice like on Southview, those are sandy areas. So that means all that tobacco litter, that nicotine and everything is leaching out. And that is what the kids are then playing in and it's absorbing and they're getting nicotine. So just to wrap up, because I know you have a full agenda, that's kind of the project we're proposing. And we just wanted to bring it forth to see if there's any questions. We're bringing it to the park board, of course, for discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Any other off-agenda items? Okay.
I didn't have some questions.
She has a question.
Okay.
I have a question, and it's probably more for police, but
Do
she
you want
kept
to come up
saying
to
it.
the podium and state your name and address?
I'm Donna Hopper from 413 South Park, and she said many times, and I agree, that cigarette butts are litter. And so I was just wondering why or not, why could it or why is it not ticketed? I see people toss their lit cigarettes out windows, drop their lit cigarettes in parking lots, the wind blows it and crap. I've had them blow right over my feet. And you see people stop and dump their ashtrays on the street. And I have never in my life seen anyone ticketed or even heard of anyone ticketed for this litter. You can probably see them when they're putting them out at the park. And I'm just wondering, the initiative or lack of one, what?
Do you guys know of anybody that's ever got written a ticket for that, or?
I've given people their cigarette butts back.
Nice.
That's why we're asking the city to look at an ordinance because
Yeah.
the enforcement issue. And so we spoke with Chief Ramsey. We're not asking for the police to go and stand, it's like alcohol or any other
That was
prohibited item in the park.
I was.
All right. Oh, yeah, Jan, go ahead. You can answer this.
Jan Jarvis from the prosecutor's office. I can say a little good news on that front is, in the past, obviously the officers have to see it happen, and they had to write out a police report, 2 full reports, and take the evidence, and we just recently changed the policy. They don't have to do that anymore. So we are going to be able to just ticket, and it'll be a lot quicker, and it will happen more often now. That's great.
All right, that's from the city's attorney's office. All righty, we don't have any other public agenda items. We'll go on to new business, and Scott's got a case with Scott Knievel from Metropolitan Care Planning.
Thank you. The zoning case I have for you today is a conditional use request for what the zoning calls wrecking and salvage. The particular use that is interested is a vehicle tow company that is interested in having an impound lot on property at 4631 South Palisade, just north of 47th Street on the west side of Palisade, which if you don't know is about a quarter to a half mile west of Broadway. The conditional use, as I mentioned, is requested for a vehicle tow box. The reason that it is required is because many of the vehicles that get towed in by a tow company are inoperable. And so the zoning itself is limited industrial, which allows a vehicle storage yard for people with store vehicles, but all of those vehicles have to be operable. So because the vehicles are inoperable, that triggers the requirement that the conditional use for wrecking and salvage be requested. The site itself is currently developed. There's a warehouse building on the site. The proposal is to store the vehicles behind that building. The area itself is an industrial park, although there is single-family residential zoning, single-family residences to the west of the site, across the former Midland Valley Railroad right-of-way, so there's a pretty significant separation that you don't always see in these circumstances, as well as some mature vegetation along the rear side of that lot. The staff is recommending that the request be approved, subject to the business being temporary storage of vehicles that have been towed only, and that there not be any parts salvaged from the vehicles that are stored on the lot. We're requiring that there be a site plan that be submitted to the planning department prior to operation of the business and within 60 days. The zoning code requires, and this conditional use does as well, a 8-foot tall solid screening fence around the perimeter of the entire area where the vehicles are stored. So they have to screen not just from the residential properties to the west, but from the street to the east, as well as from the industrial zone properties to the north and to the south. The height of any vehicles that are behind that fence can't exceed the height, and these vehicles can't be visible from adjoining properties, ground level view of adjoining properties in the street right away. There's a requirement for maintaining that landscape buffer that I mentioned. It's along the west property line. Also have conditions that relate to rodents, to weeds, to fire department access, to employee parking, to as we do with all salvage yards, they're required to allow access to city employees for inspections of the site for compliance with the standards in the conditional use. Also required, if they are going to be disposing of fuel or oil or other chemicals, that they have a plan that is submitted and approved by environmental services prior to doing that. It's also required to have a drainage plan approved by the city engineer. The site itself is probably not going to change. The site is already a gravel lot, but they are required to demonstrate that they're not creating any runoff onto the adjoining properties. So with that, the findings are on page 4 and 5, the staff report.
Okay. Does anyone from the board have any questions or like any further information?
Did you receive any objections from the adjoining committee?
We have not.
Is there anyone from the audience that has any questions or statements? Okay. Move to approve. Okay, motion by Michael. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Urban Infill Advisory Committee, Wichita Places for People.
That is me as well.
Okay.
Some of you, I think, were on the district advisory board about 4 years ago when the city and county adopted their most recent comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan contained in it what's called a urban infill strategy that was designed to promote the development of vacant and underutilized properties within what's called the established central area, which I'll show you a map of here in a second. That effort was undertaken for about the first 2.5 years by a citizen steering committee comprised of, I want to say it was close to 30 people on the steering committee who met not monthly, but roughly quarterly through that time period, and came up with a number of ideas and kind of reached a point where they really felt like they needed more information. And so the planning department approached the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or WAMPO as it's called, for grant funding to hire a consultant, a group of consultants to prepare this Wichita Places for People plan, which I can show you now. So, turn this thing on. All right, so the purpose of this plan is to put people first, and that is when we're making design decisions, particularly on infill projects, on vacant and underutilized sites in the established central area. Those projects should be designed in a way that the first thought in the design decision is how are people going to interact with this site. It also is intended to connect neighborhoods better to commercial centers in a way that is safer to walk or bicycle to those locations than it is today, which is to providing transportation options for everyone, including walking, bicycling, and other primary mode of non-vehicular transportation, of course, is our bus system or our transit. And it's all focused on creating active centers in the established central area, in areas that were, I think, much more active in past years than they are now. So why are we doing this? One of the things that the comprehensive plan suggests that we should do is take better care of what we have, rather than disposing of places and allowing them to deteriorate. We should put in place policies that promote the revitalization and redevelopment of those areas within our established community. And that's really a change in policy. A lot of the growth, if you will, that has occurred in this community over the last 30 or 40 years has really been on the edge and not in the established areas, not in the established neighborhoods. Provide that focus on those existing established neighborhoods, provide for a way that those neighborhoods could change, but change in a way that is not detrimental to the people that have lived there and created their lives there. The primary way we would do that is by addressing some regulatory barriers. In 1996, the city and county adopted a zoning code. While it was very good at supporting growth on the edge of the community, it established those same standards for existing neighborhoods, even though these existing neighborhoods weren't really built in that fashion. Required large setbacks, screening, landscaping, huge parking lots, those sorts of things that really turned out to not be necessary for redevelopment in the established central area. This map probably doesn't show up very well in the back, but the red outline around there is about 62 square miles in the center of Wichita that runs from 29th Street on the north to 31st Street on the south to Rock Road on the east and Ridge Road on the west. You can see that it's about 38% of Wichita's land area, but it's 54% of its population, and 56% of the households, and then 66% of the jobs. So this is a critical area of Wichita and its future economy, and allowing it to deteriorate is really, at least in the framers of our comprehensive plan, something we can't afford to do over the next 15 or 20 years. So the approach that is recommended by the plan is to look at, and I'll show you a sample map here in a second, some what we call opportunity areas for redevelopment that are based on this, what's called nodal development pattern, which focuses the more intense commercial type uses kind of at the center of the area that is to be developed. Typically, it doesn't have to be in the center, but it's the activity center of that development, with a transition in uses to quasi-commercial or higher density residential uses, and then edge uses that are more traditional lower density residential uses. Some examples of the three types of places that we're identifying in the plan are the neighborhood hub, which are the smallest of the three types. 13th and West Street is an example that's illustrated there. Community core is an area that is a relatively sizable commercial district, but perhaps not a overall regional draw, something like the Delano district, although I think given the things that are happening in Delano, it probably is going to rise to being a regional center itself. And then an example of a current regional center is the Wesley Hospital area, where we literally attract people from all over the state to a regional center to come to our city. You see this map is a bit of a blow up of that area. The lime green sites are the regional center locations, town east, town west, downtown, old town. Can't really see the color, but I want to say they're red. Larger circles are the community core areas, and then the neighborhood hubs are it's like yellow here, and the smaller dots. One of the things to note is that all of these places have in this plan a development program, if you will. So as you can see, the regional center requires about 100,000 people to support. And so redeveloping all of these regional centers or all of these community cores or all of the neighborhood hubs is not how it's going to happen. We don't have the population or economy to all of these places to redevelop, but we anticipate that some of them will. We have a plan in place for how they should in a way that is more walkable, that is better connected to the neighborhoods that are around. This is an example of a bird's eye view of what could happen at the Town West Mall location. That mall, as I think many people are aware, is struggling, and it's to be a retail center, which is what it was constructed as. And in fact, much of the surrounding retail areas that were at one time Kmart's and other types of retail stores, those retail uses are all gone. Those buildings are either vacant or they're occupied by other types of uses that are in the manufacturing business, warehousing. And so this is an illustration of how that area over time could redevelop in a way that supported a mixture of uses, not just commercial uses, which is all that is in that location today. And this shows multi-story mixed-use buildings that would have residential uses on the upper floors, commercial uses on the ground floors. It also shows street designs that accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists in ways that we really don't do very frequently all over the city. These, of course, would be connected to our existing system where we do have those types of facilities. This is kind of a ground level view of what that type of development might look like at that location. And this is a plan view that shows the dark purple is the area that would be the node of development, the most intense development. You can see underneath that is the illustration is the current buildings that are in that site. So this would be centered on Tracy and Taft, as opposed to perhaps the major arterial intersection of Maple and West. Because quite frankly, in this location, most of the development potential is in the parking lots and in the empty buildings that are in and around this site. And I think we're already starting to see right at the corner of Kellogg and West some of this type of redevelopment occurring already. So these places get built with three primary components. You have the streets and sidewalks that connect everything together. Open space, which really makes the space livable, if you will. Plan suggests that all of these major developments should have an open space component that would be either an expansion of our park system or open space that was incorporated into the private development, like some of the other developments, Bradley Fair and some others that have done that kind of open space component as part of the development. And then focuses on building types themselves. There's a lot of information here that I won't go into in great detail, but the sidewalks would have their standard layout of providing a wide pathway for the pedestrians, as well as what are called amenities on the sidewalk, street trees, lights, benches, trash cans, those sorts of things. And then there would be a variety of types of streets that ranged from what's called a mixed-use Main Street, which the example that's illustrated there is Douglas Avenue in Delano, mixed-use connector, which would have connect areas that are various nodes and other areas within the development with a more major street, but that one that still supported transit, walking, bicycling, to a greater extent than we do in most of our streets now. The residential connector is similar, but would have fewer travel lanes because it would have fewer lower traffic volume. And then the residential neighborhood street is really a pretty common street type that would continue. The plan is suggesting that when those streets do get built, that they get built with sidewalks, which we don't always do in this community and didn't do for quite some time. So there's a number of residential neighborhoods that never were developed with sidewalks. And then it talks about a couple of downtown type streets like plaza streets that we have in Old Town, or active alleys like we have also essentially in Old Town in St. Francis and Douglas. And when you're doing districts, it's suggesting that you develop the streets in a way that help people get around, both with information, but then also with safety improvements like an elevated crosswalk, which you'll, if anybody has been in Old Town recently, they've seen that street has torn up. When that street comes back, it's going to have these elevated sidewalk and crosswalks. So we'll get an example of how that works in our community. Incorporating the amenities that I mentioned, bike parking, street furniture, those sorts of things, patio dining, with pedestrian access along our sidewalks. Obviously, these would be the streets that were in the main node of those commercial redevelopment areas. Landscaping is a critical component along a street like this, as well as providing on-street parking. And then one of the things that we're talking about now with the Douglas corridor in the Douglas Design District is considering separating, that says land, it should say bike lane, and the sidewalk set in a way that provides for facilities for both pedestrians and bicyclists that are not in the street, if you will. The open space, there's a number of types of open space approaches that the plan suggests. These first two probably are less likely to be used in a redevelopment scenario, but they are the types of parks that we have in our system. More likely we're to see things like a community park or a neighborhood park be included in a redevelopment area, either adding a park or improving an existing park to a level that provides better services to the neighborhoods around it. And then in some of the more densely developed areas like Delano or the Douglas Design District, redevelopments in those areas or even downtown, putting in public squares like the squares in Old Town or courtyards and plazas. This is the one that is at the old City Hall in downtown. And then the buildings themselves, this really gets at some of the zoning recommendations that I'm going to talk about in a minute. It suggests that as we go about implementing this plan, we should look at making the type of lawful development that the plan suggests the easy approach when it comes to zoning. And the trade-off for that is that there would be, were you to not have to go through a zoning case to do development that perhaps you have to go through today. In exchange for that, there would be some design requirements that would be reviewed by staff, probably even with an appeal of that staff decision available, would be my guess, either from the applicant themselves, who might think that the staff is interpreting the design requirements too stringently and requiring them to do something they shouldn't have to do, or from neighboring property owners to feel perhaps the opposite is the case. Staff is being too liberal with their interpretation of the design requirements. They feel like there should be another look at it. So these are various types of housing that I won't go into all of the details, because quite frankly, this piece of it is relatively complicated. But some of the things that we don't see much of that we have seen in the past are things like a compact detached house, which essentially from the outside looks like a large house, but it's a multi-family dwelling, a 2 to 4 family dwelling. The duplex itself, the plan suggests that we should allow duplexes in more areas than we allow them today, but that they should have design requirements like having front doors and windows that face the street, have a certain percentage of the facade that is not the garage door, those sorts of things. The plan is also suggesting that we be more permissive on allowing what's called accessory dwelling units, or is when we bring them to you today, or what are called accessory apartments. Those are small single family homes that are located on the lot where there is already another house. The multi-unit house is actually what I described previously. Is the house that looks larger that is actually a multi-family. And then we see some of these types of row houses or small apartments. The plan is suggesting that these be allowed along the more major roadways and along corners or edges of neighborhoods on properties that right now are restricted to lower density housing. And then the mid-rise, high-rise, those would still be something that would be limited in the locations in which they could be located, similar to the way they are today. And quite frankly, we really don't have the market or the revenue generating capability for constructing one of these things brand new, at least not right now in our economy. It does suggest that we would continue to see apartment complexes, but that those would need to be designed in a way that was better integrated into the neighborhood, primarily putting the buildings out in front of the parking as opposed to vice versa, so that the people who might be living close by are actually looking at a building as opposed to a parking lot. And then some of the commercial buildings that it's recommending, the types of things that we, obviously have in our community now, but were you to want to build something like this live-work unit or this small-scale commercial building today, our zoning code would not allow you to do that. It wouldn't allow you to build it up to the street, would probably require you to provide more parking than you were able to provide on the site where you want to develop it in this fashion. The same is true with these mixed use types of development buildings, where we are seeing a little bit of the request to do this small scale and medium scale mixed use type development, which are usually pretty complicated to get through the zoning process. So the number of people that consider it and the number of people that actually go through it are actually a lot smaller once they find out how much work it is to get that approved. There's some suggestions about how to do development of pad sites with drive-throughs a little bit differently than we do today, more focused on safer pedestrian and bicycle connections to those facilities. And then the large-scale mixed use, the big boxes, the parking garages, all are things that we expect will continue to be built in our community, and plan recommend some alternative design standards that you might use to make those more pedestrian friendly. The primary difference in a lot of this is the frontage type in terms of how the buildings are built in relationship to the street. Our current code requirements require nearly every building to have a front setback. And what ends up happening is the parking gets built in that front setback because it's not really usable, productive commercial space in a commercial area, as well as from a residential standpoint. You have to build to the front setback. There's often been not a large enough side or rear setback for there to be parking in any location right in the front. This suggests that in the appropriate locations, we should allow people to build what's called a neighborhood yard, which is designed to have parking on the side or in the back, have a build to street development where the parking is all in the back, access from the side, have courtyard style development, which used to be pretty common for multifamily development. We don't really see today because the same reasons, the setbacks, the parking requirements. The terrace yard is like the one that I described previously, but the setbacks a little bit larger. It has more landscaping. And then this setback with this buffer where you're actually not putting parking right in front of the building, but putting it beside the building is one of the suggestions on how to make those commercial spaces more pedestrian friendly. So one of the questions we've had is that the plan itself has some recommendations regarding to zoning and to public investment. These are recommendations that came to us from a consultant through a planning process. The recommendations themselves have options. And so adopting the plan does not put in place, or even put in motion exactly the options that might be selected for zoning or for public investment, but it does establish as official city policy that is something that the community wants to pursue in the future, which we would do were this plan to be adopted by the city council. Planning to take it to in June as well as to the planning commission this Thursday. So some of the things that are in the recommendations regarding zoning, it's using the building types as opposed to just a strict number of units per acre is an approach that allows you to build relatively small projects that actually have quite a few units based in comparison to the land area, but because of the way that they're built, with smaller setbacks, less parking on the site, the impact of that development is much more human scale as it is as it relates to the street, and so fits in with much better in many of the neighborhoods where these types of projects might be built, which were also designed and built at a time when developments were much more focused on the human scale. One of the recommendations is to allow the accessory dwelling units by right in the single family neighborhoods. There would, of course, as I mentioned, would be design requirements on what those would have to look like. They have to match the existing building, have to be subordinate to the existing building, and other types of things that we require as we allow those by conditional use in single family neighborhoods now. Basically taking that review and making it an administrative review as opposed to a public hearing review. The zoning code suggests that we should allow street front buildings, like I showed, buildings that are built right up to the street, and change the required setbacks for commercial or mixed use projects. And again, requiring that human scale design in order to allow that option. One of the approaches to that is to move the parking, as I mentioned previously, to the back and to the side of the buildings instead of the front. Some of the approaches, some of the options that the plan is suggesting is we could literally make this type of walkable development standard an option that the property owner could select. They could develop under our existing code, or they could develop under this optional code. We'll have to explore the ramifications of that. There's drawbacks, pluses and minuses with all of these. The plan also recommends that we might identify specific locations using location criteria in the plan, that we would allow certain things in those locations based on a review of what those locations are, and perhaps not allow it in other locations that don't meet that criteria. So that might be an approach we use. We might do an overlay, which I think most of the folks that have been on this group for a while are familiar with that technique, where you add additional zoning regulations. In this case, they would be typically limit or restrict uses through this. This would actually allow greater uses. And then there's recommendations about using the types of planned unit developments or community unit plans that we use to do this type of planning, to put in place standards for those that would allow a more walkable development approach. And then something we've been doing with pretty great frequency for the last 10 or 12 years is putting in place ways to reduce the parking requirement. In a lot of cases, makes these smaller scale developments, really redevelopments in particular, pretty impossible given the limited site area, and often the parking that is required is significantly greater than what is ended up being used. And we think we see that a lot in a lot of our commercial and even multifamily developments, where their maximum occupancy, they might reach the maximum occupancy on their parking a couple days a year, but most of the time it's half empty. Some of the investment tools are some of the same things that we have been using for redevelopment projects, tax financing, community improvement districts, business improvement districts, special assessments. The plan suggests tax reductions. It does not really offer us a whole lot of great advice about exactly how to do that. Tax credits are, there are a number of tax credits that have been used for redevelopment projects that relate to housing and to historic preservation in particular. Creating low interest loan pools for redevelopment is a tool that a number of communities have used. Opportunity zones is a new tax credit tax deferral program at the federal level that will work in a number of the areas that are identified in the established central area. The plan also recommends some grant programs like what we've done with the facade improvement grant that passed, things along those lines. Another recommendation it has is to establish a land bank, which is would be under state law is something the city of Wichita can create. That land bank can be the city council, the board of that can be the city council, it can be an appointed board by the city council, but its purpose is to acquire, hold, and manage, and then ultimately convey distressed properties. Those properties typically are abandoned and or tax foreclosed, and usually the ability of a private developer to gain ownership of these properties is pretty restricted, and it's also difficult to acquire multiple properties in the same condition and then hold them long enough to where you can acquire enough properties to do a larger project. And so land bank is something that would be a possibility for doing those sorts of things. So you can see the web address there. If you want to see all several hundred pages of this plan, it's on our website. And what we're asking today is have you discuss it. And they might publicly discuss it if they choose to recommend that the city council approve this plan.
Anybody from the advisory board have any questions?
Thanks for the report. So is there a proposed budget for this yet?
Well, there is not a proposed budget. The most of the strategies can be done budget neutral because they're policy approaches. Some of the other things is really just taking the policies and then applying it to budgetary decisions. I mean, it's not necessarily recommending that we spend more than we do now, but that we look at spending what we spend differently.
I think that, building infrastructure is good. It's going to be part of what helps retain people in our city. And I think that's a positive. But we also should consider some of the things closer to home. We have sidewalks that need work still. We have intersections with no stop signs. Just right on McCormick and intersection of Meridian there where that railroad is across from Newman. That tears your car up going over that railroad. It's been there forever. So I think we need to consider some of those things as well when we're spending money on infrastructure.
And I don't mean to say that the overall comprehensive plan really does, in its recommended strategies, recommend spending significantly more on maintaining the infrastructure that we have now. It's just not a particular focus of this plan, this part of that plan.
I didn't see a reduction in city fees. Has that been discussed at all?
That's on the table. I don't know that the fees themselves are, in my experience, haven't been the limiting factor. It's been much more the regulations than the fees.
I mean, what's a new house cost you now?
Oh, in terms
$6,000-7,000,
Oh,
just in your permits and fees.
for the water and sewer and all of that. I mean, sure. I mean,
There
there are
might be an
options.
opportunity there to work some additional things.
And that is, in fact, there is a little bit of something in the plan now that I think about it. Didn't appear on the slide. It does reference that.
So as a whole, sorry, you have your hand up.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so as a whole, does property owners have more freedom under this?
I would say yes. I would say that the individual
It sounded like,
property
but I wanted
owner
to make sure
would be
it
able to do more with their property than they can today. without having to go through a public hearing. The plan itself to be adopted, and then of course we're to follow up zoning then adopt.
Is there any particular cities that this was modeled after or conveyed after? With the same size, larger, smaller?
I would not say there's any particular city that's doing it exactly this way, but this approach to planning is being implemented in a variety of ways across the country in communities of really all types. But yeah, in terms of our unique circumstance, really, I mean, we're number of the communities that have the same sort of economic base that we have had and do still have had major losses in population, and so their strategy is totally different than ours. We've not actually lost population. We've just managed to spread out and just leave behind areas that we vacated, but didn't really lose the population. So we still have that population that could repopulate those locations. So our strategy is a little different from that standpoint, because there's not many cities like us that have had a major industrial base that has shrunk, that didn't also lose most of the people who were working there. We lost the jobs, but we didn't lose the people.
I had a question, and will the street front buildings still be landscaped? Because we've got some between East Central and Grove downtown that are really ugly, that are right up to the street and not landscaped.
Yeah, typically if you build it right up to the street, you don't actually do the landscape. What landscaping you do is what's in that amenity zone that I showed on the sidewalk, and actually be in the street right of way as opposed to on the property itself. The one caveat to that is if they've got parking beside their building, they can generally either screen or landscape in front of that parking area above.
So will that be written in the ordinance, or?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what's going to be in the zoning, because that's that process. We spent 2.5, 3 years working on that. The zoning itself is probably going to take us another year to put together. You're not making those final decisions today. We will be back to discuss that with you on probably multiple occasions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the dad? About the public, any questions from the public? If you would, please. You can stay seated if you need to.
Okay.
Say your name and address, please.
Mary Cole, 2525 North Somerset, here in Wichita. I don't have a question, but I do have comments. I've been using a walker off and on since June of 2017. And the city has become in love placing bricks in crosswalks and everything, and even out here. And I don't know whether any of you have ever used a walker. Sometimes the bricks go straight, but then off like the ones out here, they're this way. It's not, it takes a lot of effort to go across bricks with a walker. Don't know about a wheelchair, but with a walker. And I would like to, if you're going to use bricks, make sure you have either a cement thing that's as wide as a walker where people can walk, where it's smooth. And then also, I mean, I don't have an electric scooter or cart or anything like you use at the first store, but, if you're wanting people to, be up and around, you need to consider people that have those little electric, I don't know what you call them, to get around. But my thing is with the bricks. And I mean, when Janet Miller was my city council person, just going across the Orchid, it's difficult. And so that's my comment about whether your sidewalks or your streets, they may look nice, but they're not easy to use, if you use a walker.
Thanks, Mayor. Any other questions or comments?
My name is Ellen Corner. I'm from District 1. And I didn't come to speak on this because I didn't know you were going to talk about it, but I have some concerns. My concern is, I read the ordinance, okay? I read the proposal, and I looked at the zoning changes. And my concern is, I'm very concerned that our single-family neighborhoods are going to take a hit. Because the ordinance does state, one of the proposals are, neighborhoods. One of the proposals stated that you could build a house behind a house. And the house behind the house has to look similar to the house in front of it. And it can be no more than 75% of the first floor. Okay, so it can't be as big as the first house, but it can be up to 75% of the floor, of the floor area of the house in front of it. Now, there's a lot of people that neighborhoods that have people that are landlords that bought houses. And so a landlord could look at this and say, oh my goodness, I can build another house behind this house. And because this is going to increase population density. But who wants their neighborhood, as a single family neighborhood, to all of a sudden have people buying up properties and building additional houses, or I think duplexes or multi-unit houses in the backyard that used to be next to your backyard? What type of, I mean, is anyone concerned about that? Because I know that there are places where in our area, there was a person who had bought up 3 houses, and he was a landlord. He bought up 3 houses, and so he got a variance to build this huge, massive additional house in the back. And so it turned up to, it took the neighborhood and changed it a great deal. So what type of security do we have as a property owner not to allow that to happen next door to us? What does this give us?
I'm with you. When I was listening to
Well,
you,
let's
I thought
have
we were-
one person at a time. We're not opening up to public discussion, but you can come up one at a time and ask questions.
And it also takes away the setbacks. So I think the setbacks now are like 24 feet in the front, and I think 8 feet on the sides. But I think it takes away those setbacks, so people can build up to your property, to where your property is. And I don't know if this includes also the HOAs. I don't know. Maybe the HOAs would be exempt from this. But I live in a house. I'm in District 1. I live in a house by McDonald Golf Course, and the floor span in my house is about 1,700 square feet. So I could build a 1,200 square foot home behind my house, and I have a big enough yard to do that, and change the whole atmosphere of my neighborhood. As could the person who lives next door to me, who is a rental, and the house is a little bit smaller, and he's not going to have, he doesn't have the brick and mortar type of house. He's got a house that'd be easy to do this with. So my question is, how are we going to protect our neighborhoods? Because this wants to put a lot of people in a small area without maybe figuring out that maybe we don't want a lot of people in our neighborhoods. Is that really good for them? So is there going to be any assurances that that won't happen? Because it goes from Ridge Road to Rock Road and 31st to 29th Street. And those are the whole area can be subjected to the change in zoning. That's my concerns.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay. I don't bring it back. Go ahead, Vince.
Just a real quick one. Vincent Hancock, 46 South Vine. One of the questions that will probably be important with this is a level of precedence with all of the other plans that are out there. We've got downtown plan, we've got Delano plan, and we want to find out if the plans conflict, which one would be the governing plan for that particular area. We've got an overlap right now with the fact that the downtown plan that was done in 2010 doesn't say in downtown. No one in Delano was ever brought in on that, and all of a sudden that plan goes all the way to the Sycamore. Then you've got the Delano plan that was approved last year by neighborhood stakeholders. So if we've got this coming in to say, okay, here is our plan for urban infill, what areas does it cover, and if the two plans conflict, do we go with this plan, do we go with this plan, or do we flip a coin? Just something to think about.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, bring it back to the deb. Anyone have any questions?
Jeff, I've got a question for Scott, if you can. Scott, at one time on the additional dwelling units, it was still going to be open for approval or disapproval by the planning. Is that still in there?
Well, we've not, as I stated, we've not figured out the exact approach to doing the zoning. So, I mean, we're going to have that conversation about exactly how it all works. And certainly some of the feedback that we're getting is that there needs to be, some level of overview. If you don't make that a staff overview as opposed to a public hearing overview, you're really not changing the regulations. You're not making it any easier to do that, so that really wouldn't be a change. So there would have to be some level of review. Typically, what the city has done in the past when they've established design guidelines and put in place zoning regulations to make something easier to accomplish, they've put that burden of review on the staff with some ability to appeal that to staff decision. Which I can say, and I don't know if it's because people aren't paying attention, or hopefully it's because we're doing a good job. We don't get those kind of appeals very frequently, usually one every 2 or 3 years.
Anything else? Anyone like to have a motion?
With a motion to endorse the plan as amended and presented.
Our options are, would the board like any further questions or explanations? Or should I-
I have no issue seconding that for a vote, just because you're so strategic and 50,000 foot on this right now, and as you pointed out.
Yeah, I mean,
the
one
more
of the-
tactical plan is coming, which will get more discussion, more votes and ordinances and things like that, so.
Yeah, really, I mean, the approach that we're taking here is that the overall comprehensive plan, very high level, suggested that we should look at these changes. We've looked at these changes and we've come up with some ideas. And we want to make sure that the community is comfortable with at least discussing these ideas further before we do that. Because if we're at a point where we've gone to this trouble and come up with this, and the community says, no, we're not interested in that at all, we as planners will work on something else. That would
I didn't see
actually
anything scary in there that makes it say, gosh, we endorse this plan at this time, that everybody's put their seal of approval on. I think there's a whole lot more discussion, so I'll second that.
Okay. Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you very much for coming in. Next up, we have TNR, Trap, Neuter, and Return, and Stephanie McCurdy, Acting Chair of the Animal Control Board.
Hello.
Good evening, Stephanie. You got 30 seconds.
Well, my
Just kidding. Take your time.
Is the PowerPoint not up there?
Oh, hold on. I'll have to
Sorry.
change it. Yeah,
Is this the right one?
All right, yes.
Okay, here we go. Everyone put your seatbelts on, here we go. We're gonna get through this pretty quick, that way everyone can go home before the storm hits. So, like Jeff said, my name is Stephanie McCurdy. I'm with Wichita Animal Services Advisory Board. And for the last few years, we have been working on a product to bring to the Wichita City Council about TNR, which is Trap, Neuter, and Return. Back in 2015, when this board was formed, the city did a survey of Wichita residents and asked them what were the most important items on the agenda for the city to be able to address as it pertains to animal control. And the protection of animals and euthanasia were the top two. And so we've addressed the protection of animals with animal abuse and so forth. And then we've also started down Trap, Neuter, and Return. We had a committee that was formed out of our board, and they spent about 2 years doing some research. And unfortunately, this committee was never able to produce a product to bring forward to the Animal Service Advisory Board. And that's when our board as a whole took on this topic. By no means is the ordinance that you're going to see today perfect. We are very aware that this ordinance some extra things, and that's why we're here today, to talk about your input and the community input, what kind of a product can we put together to make a better ordinance for the city. We want your support to create this solution and for feral cats that does not result in euthanasia, and the city can continue on with animal services with the budget that they currently have. We do not want a lot of unmanageable expectations for feral cats, because we believe that it would divert individuals from registering colonies and essentially not knowing where all the colonies are located. So what is TNR? For those of you that don't know, it's trap, neuter, and return. TNR is a method of reducing outdoor cat populations by capturing them, providing them spay and neuter services, and then returning them back to their original environment. TNR, how it works is we pick them up, we cage them after capture, we transport them to a clinic. They undergo surgery and their ears are notched to identify that they have been neutered and or spayed. The cats are given about 24, 48 hours to recover, and then they're returned to their original environment. There are approximately 6 to 8 million cats and dogs that enter the U.S. shelters every year, with half of them being euthanized. And so with trap, neuter, and return, it's a way to control the population of feral cats. TNR creates an opportunity to help protect people as well as animals by reducing conflict between cats and humans, as well as other cats and animals. And a community-wide TNR program, they're effective because they halt reproduction of existing cats through sterilization, leading to long-term cat management, and the reduction and the eventual elimination of outdoor cat colonies. We vaccinate the cats at the same time the TNR is done, which that addresses other diseases, rabies and other diseases, and addressing any public health concerns that community members may have. It decreases nuisance complaints by eliminating and dramatically reducing noise from cat fighting, mating, and odor from unneutered male cats that spray urine to mark their territory. It also eases the burden on community resources, such as animal shelters that are flooded with cats and their offspring. And in some instances, it creates the immediate reduction of feral cats, because kittens that are brought in the trap, neuter, release program can sometimes be socialized, routed into an adoption process, and friendly adult cats that are presumed to be feral can also take the route of adoption if they are friendly and they can survive being put into a home environment. The committee put together a proposed ordinance and was presented to the Animal Advisory Board in April 2018. The committee presented a draft ordinance to the board that day, and it was discussed at this and several other meetings, and there was significant public comment. A final draft of the ordinance was developed and provided to the Wichita Police Department and essentially to the Wichita City Council. The police department formed an internal committee to review the ordinance as well, to ensure the applicability and the enforceability for the TNR and any nuisance complaints there may be. The consensus was not easy. We held multiple meetings around this, including special meetings outside of our board meetings. We heard a lot of what everyone had to say, good, bad, ugly, great, and eventually came to what we are going to see here today. Okay. The city of Wichita recognized the need for innovation and addressing the issues presented by feral free-roaming cats. To the end, it recognizes that trap, neuter, return in this program is a viable option to manage and over time reduce the population of community cats, thus reducing the number of cats entering the shelter system and being euthanized. This program relies upon volunteer caregivers to trap free-roaming cats, to spay and neuter and vaccinate them for rabies, and then they ear tip them, and then return to the location where the cats were originally trapped with the property owner's permission, or to an alternate location. Now, I shared with the Wichita City Council during that presentation that there was a colony that was actually trapped and neutered and released at another location from where they came from. And within the first year, 3 cats made it 2.5 hours away from where they were released to go back to their original destination. So it just shows you that if there's a will, there's a way, and they really like to be in their home environment where they came from. The creation of the TNR ordinance is to address the overpopulation of cats. And it also creates a definition for feral and community cats and other specific subject matters for TNR. Example is feral cat, one that is unsocialized to humans and has a temperament of extreme fear or resistance to contact with humans. A community cat means an ear-tipped feral cat that may be cared for by a designated caregiver in the immediate area, and community cats are not domesticated. These cats that we're talking about today, they're not indoor cats. They're not cats that are animals that people, sleep in their beds at night or sit on the couch. We're talking about animals, cats specifically, that really can't be touched. They don't want any contact with humans, and they'd rather you just leave them alone. This also talks about caregiver guidelines for feeding, watering, and care. Also mandated registration of cat colonies, thus being able to identify where these colonies are located and who's taking care of them, and making sure that they're providing the required food, water, and medical care that is needed. And then annual reporting, so we know that colonies, what's happening in the colonies. If we've got a cat in the colony that's passed away, if they've had to take one in for medical care, and then the applicable enforcement by animal services if actually warranted. So I want to share with you a couple of statistics that I think that we should all be mindful of. In 2016, we euthanized 1,630 cats that came into the shelter system here in Wichita. In 2017, we euthanized 1,227. And then in 2018, we only euthanized 920. In those 3 years, we had an organization in Wichita called Friends of Felines who actually stepped up their TNR game, and they started doing TNR at a high level for the city. There was no cost for the city. They did all of their own funding. And the last year they tracked, spay neutered, and released 1,017 cats. Had those cats not been trapped, they could have ended up in the shelter. And approximately it costs the city $20 to $25 a day to hold one animal. So we keep the animals in the shelter if they're brought in or they're trapped for about 12 days. So that's about $240 to $300 per one animal if it's not reclaimed by an owner or taken out by rescue or transferred to the Kansas Humane Society. So it costs Friends of Felines about $10 per cat. That cost covers the spay and neuter, ear tip, and the rabies vaccination. So in total in 2018, with the 920 cats that the city of Wichita euthanized, it cost the city approximately $220,800 to $276 or $276,000 on an average. If you take the $20, $25 a day times the 12-day stay, so you get about $220,000. These statistics do not include local organizations that are also doing TNR besides Friends of Felines, because KHS also has a program that does this as well. So the benefits of this ordinance change are to create a community-centric approach to solving the issue as opposed to a government focus. So like I said, this TNR ordinance has no budget bearing on the city of Wichita. It's all community funded. And it also helps with the reduction of the intake numbers of cats at the shelter, with the ultimate goal of reducing euthanasia and regarding cats. Just like I said, the current reduction is at 25%, which is a significant decrease from the 66% in 2013. There are multiple cities around us that have already passed a TNR ordinance. Kansas City, Lawrence, Oklahoma City, and they're doing TNR at a high level, and they're already seeing a reduction in the cats that are coming into their facilities there. Also, this takes community buy-in. We create other funding sources by approving a TNR ordinance. So organizations such as Friends of Feline and other rescues are able to apply for grants that help pay for the TNR programs. And cat-related intake and euthanasia costs over almost $1 billion a year just in the United States. So what we've done so far is nothing. The only thing that we're doing are picking up cats, taking them in the shelter, and hoping that they get out. This is an opportunity to be able to help control that population and essentially reduce the whole community cat population. Large-scale sterilization programs depend on the volunteer support. So non-lethal management programs are readily supported by the majority of the people in the community who are willing to help take care of these community cats, while lethal control will not be received in the same support. Most people don't think that euthanasia is the best way to go whenever we have animals in the shelter, which we have already experienced. Without TNR, it stresses shelters, overwhelms resources, and far exceeds the capacity, and gives false expectations to citizens that are coming to animal shelters for help that this will resolve our problem. Our recommendation was to continue on and be able to present this to the DABs and take input back to the Wichita Animal Services Advisory Board today, and to place as the first reading and authorize any necessary signatures. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes.
So on the report, just a quick question on the survey methodology from the December 2017 community survey. Was that a representative of all the districts, the survey, or was it in any particular district that the survey was given?
So it was sent out by the city of Wichita. And I do have that. Let me tell you the district breakdown for you. So District 1 had 103 participants. District 2 had 74. District 3 had 69. District 4 had 150. District 5 had 93. And District 6 had 123. And we also had 131 people who did not answer this question in the survey. Thank you.
How many registered caregivers are there in each of these colonies, and how are these colonies identified?
So currently, we have no registered caregivers because we don't require them to register because there's no TNR ordinance in place.
So how are you going to go after people to get them to be registered caregivers?
So the thing that we know about caregivers for cats is that whenever they're reaching out for help, they want someone to help them. They're not necessarily thinking that, I'm going to call this person and they're going to help me getting into compliance. So we know that if we have an ordinance set forth before them, bringing them into compliance is a little bit easier because then we're able to identify where they are, what help they need. So they may have 3 or 4 in their colony, and they need to make sure that they get all of those 3 or 4 tracked and neutered. So we're going to set up particular feeding schedules for them, that way that they can be tracked, and making sure that they're feeding them at the same time. So we're able to recognize how many are in that colony and to be able to get them into compliance with the ordinance.
Who's gonna be doing these feeding, of the colonies?
So currently, if they have a colony already, they're the ones that are doing the feedings. Friends of Felines, when they go out and help someone, they set up a feeding schedule. That way they're able to track those animals and get them to the services.
So how many colonies would you suspect that there are in Wichita?
I would be a fool to guess.
Because there'd be so many volunteers that'd be needed to go and just feed them for 30 minutes a day and then make sure the food is taken away and.
The colony caregivers who feeds them. It's not an outside volunteer that goes to. They just go out and help them set up a feeding schedule. And then that caregiver is the one that says, okay, at 4 o'clock, I know I gotta put out the food. So they put out the food at 4 o'clock and they pick it up at a specific time. So they don't leave food and water out all the time for them. That way they get on a schedule so they know that's where they are.
And are these paid caregivers?
No,
Caregivers?
they're all volunteers.
They're all volunteers. And what's to say there's people that are all gung ho right now, and you had some a year ago, and that they're gonna stay consistent with the program once the ordinance is passed?
Well, if they're registered and we know where they are, we're able to go and check on that colony, Animal Services is, to make sure that they're still in compliance with the ordinance.
But right now, you have no idea where any colonies
No,
are?
because we don't have an ordinance set up to know where any of them are.
So it's all volunteers that are gonna find the cat colonies? And these people that have cats or cat colonies, they're limited to 8
Right.
between their own home and the cat colony?
That's what the new
What the
ordinance. Yes.
proposed ordinance would be. When you wanna vaccinate these cats, which you're talking about vaccinating them,
Yes.
how long do the vaccinations last?
So there's 2 different options for rabies. Rabies has 2 different types. You can do a 1-year vaccination, which some people do, some people do not. Some people choose a 3-year vaccination schedule. The unfortunate part is that you're not going to be able to continue to retrap and retrap and retrap. But having 1 vaccination of rabies is better than having none. Because we don't really know how long those vaccinations do truly last. There's a lot of different studies out there that tell you right at that 3 mark, that's when they stop. And then there's some that say that some animals in the condition that they are can last a little bit longer. But we do know that a feral cat lifespan is not even close to as long as a healthy house cat that is not being exposed to other viruses and diseases and trauma, basically.
No, in these buffer zones with parks to keep the cats out from using the sand playgrounds and things like that, do you have any plans for that?
So we've had that question before. Cats can travel up to 2.5 miles. So if we put buffer zones around anything that was a protected area, there's really no way to control that. Even with cats that go in and out of a house, there's really no way to control how far they do travel.
So they just can get in city parks or whatever and use the sandboxes and things like that, and there's just no way to control that?
Unfortunately, they already do. But this is
Right.
an opportunity to cut down on that population and eventually eliminate feral cats here in our community by sterilizing them, so they're not reproducing.
Mhm.
Because cats don't just have one kitten every time they give birth. They
Right.
have, 8. And if kittens survive their infancy and as a feral cat, they're going to reproduce. And they just keep reproducing and multiplying until it's completely out of control,
Unless you take them in and euthanize them.
which doesn't solve the problem,
Well,
unfortunately.
it gets rid of the cats that are there.
Temporarily, yes.
It does. And it's a lot cheaper than monitoring all this and having people that are going out that are,
The good thing about the people that are monitoring these colonies is they're volunteers and they want to do it because they want to be a source to help the problem and not continue to let the problem get out of hand.
well, who keeps these free roaming cats from going to neighbors and digging in neighbors' beds or rooting in neighbors' furniture?
Are you talking about outdoor furniture? Because they shouldn't be indoors.
Outdoor furniture,
Okay.
outdoor furniture.
Sure.
I've had that happen personally to me where they burned
Sure.
furniture.
Well, if a colony caregiver is following the guidelines and they're feeding them and watering them, they're staying in that remote area because they know that's where they're gonna get their bread and butter. They're not going to be, running them up. Especially if they're spayed and neutered. They're not gonna be fighting with other cats. That's not their MO.
So what if I've got a neighbor that loves cats and she's feeding a colony and I'm not crazy about them?
And what?
And I don't want those colonies near me. But
As
my
long
neighbor,
as she's following the caregiver guidelines and she's in compliance and they're not creating a nuisance, and if they are, you can call Wichita Animal Services and Lieutenant Sigmund will be able to send an officer out to assess the situation and help you. Then they can stay on that property.
yeah, I have a friend who's got cats on both sides of her house.
Yeah.
And she does not, well, she's got dogs, and she does not want these cats in her yard all the time, they're lying on her furniture, and it's a real nuisance for her.
Has she contacted Wichita Animal Services?
She has many times.
And what did they tell her?
They didn't tell her anything, they just told her there was nothing they could do about it, they didn't have an ordinance.
Okay. If you'd like to have her contact me, I would definitely look into it for you and help you out or help your friends out. And Lieutenant Sigmund would also do the same.
Well,
We want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.
Right, well, I think she's actually moving because of the problem.
If she needs a realtor, I know a really good.
I think she's already got that place taken care of where she's going, but.
Well, I just thought I would offer.
So-
I like to help people. So does Jeff. We can.
Stephanie, I was asking my wife at the meeting, I was asking her, I was trying to explain this to her earlier today. And she came back and she said, so they're trapping wildcats and they're fixing them and they're returning them to the wild.
Yeah.
Not trying to oversimplify it, but that's
it.
That's what she asked me.
Yeah.
Or vaccinating them, and possibly that's another alternative, correct?
Well, TNR, we do vaccinate for rabies during the TNR. If we go pick up a cat in a trap and we take it and we spay or neuter it, depending on the sex, we also give it a rabies shot and then we send it back to where it came from. And that way they don't go meet Mr. Friendly at their colony and create little friendlies.
So who's actually gonna enforce this ordinance?
So, to enforce the ordinance?
Yes.
Well, it's an ordinance, just like we, enforce speeding or people that shoot guns in the city or any violation. We do have animal services that does go out on multiple complaints about different things every day. So they would be the ones that would be responding to any type of nuisance. Yes.
Anyone else from the BAB have any questions? No.
Thank you guys for the work that you've done on this. I didn't say that earlier. So section C, item 3, states that a registered community cat caregiver is a responsible party, but not an owner of a community cat colony, and has no legal rights to the feral cat. So they're responsible, but they can't be held liable.
So this is where it gets a little convoluted for people. So a community cat belongs to the community, not to a specific person like myself, okay? So let's say that I have a colony on my property and I spay and neuter them, I vaccinate them, I feed them and water them, and then one of the animals gets sick, like noticeably sick. Like I see it, it's got an upper respiratory infection, and I don't seek care for that. That's when they're responsible to get that animal help. Does that make sense? So they're the ones that are going to be saying, I need help. If they can't give the animal help, they would contact probably a rescue organization or Wichita Animal Services and say, I've got a cat in my colony that's really sick, and we don't want to leave, animals out on the street that are sick, hurt, or abandoned. So we're going to help that person out. So we're not just going to leave that animal with an infection out, so they can infect other animals as well.
What other questions?
So Stephanie, I'm sorry, you.
Is there a mechanism for reporting colonies but not wanting to be responsible for them? If I know there's one down the street from me, how do I report that so someone can maybe adopt that colony or
Yeah.
DNR that colony?
You can contact Wichita Animal Services and they would be able to help you. And they would also be able to refer you to a community organization that would be able to help with that as well.
So aside from not euthanizing cats, what problem are we solving? What is TNR solving? Aside, I get some folks are very passionate about the euthanization of animals, but if we take that off the table, what are we solving by not euthanizing cats?
We're actually halting the reproduction of more cats.
But doesn't euthanization halt reproduction?
Not necessarily.
Sorry?
Not necessarily. Because if we.
Okay, Lola, hold on. How does euthanizing the animal not stop it from reproducing further?
Oh, well, that one stops reproducing.
Okay.
Like it doesn't grow a ghost and take off into the wilderness. Right.
Cool there.
Yeah.
That's why I'm getting to this point where we're already trapping animals and we're taking them. And right now they're getting put down after a certain amount of time.
Sure.
You're talking about TNR. So again, outside of not euthanizing the animal, what problem are we solving?
Yeah. It's more
What does the ordinance do that we're not already?
Yeah, along those lines, right?
cost savings for the euthanasia. It costs money to hold the animal for 12 days
Well,
and then to
okay,
euthanize them.
then why aren't we talking about holding the animal less than 12 days and want to cut down the costs?
Because we have state law we have to follow.
Okay, well, that would be
Yeah.
another way to address that. Again, that kind of the core issue
Yeah.
to me is, I don't understand outside of not killing the cat.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're required by
Problem.
law, well, I say we, but Wichita Animal Services in the city of Wichita, through a government entity, is required by law to hold the animal for a specific amount of days. So if the owner, if there is an owner, then that owner is able to find the animal and then to reclaim that animal as well.
Okay.
And if it passes on a good day, to be able to go to the Kansas Humane Society, then it has an opportunity for adoption. But before it leaves that facility, it's also spayed or neutered and vaccinated.
Right, but we're already doing that under the current ordinance.
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's a cost
So much,
savings.
okay, so all you're talking about is cost right now.
Yeah.
Is that there's a cost.
It saves the city money and puts it back on the community and the volunteers to be able to take care
And
of that.
what's the hard data on the cost savings that we're talking?
I can't hear you.
The hard data on the cost savings that you're talking about?
So
Where is that coming from? Where's the numbers?
I can tell you, hold on. Give me 1 second to get some minutes. So it costs the Wichita Animal Services about $20 to $25 a day. We got that from Lieutenant Sigmund and his staff.
Okay, so the $20 to $25 per day.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a base number that no matter how many animals we euthanized, it would be no more, no less? In other words, those facilities there's a base overhead for those facilities, and whether you euthanize 100 cats a day or 20 cats a day, it's gonna be at least 10, 15, 20, whatever that number is. So there's an incremental reduction somewhere in there that, to me, it's not just, you're not talking about reducing it by $20 to $25 per animal. I think that number is probably a lot less based on that incremental come down. Is that fair? You follow my logic there?
That $20 to $25, just to clarify, that's including everything. That's manpower, utilities, cost of running the shelter.
Which would all be there anyway, regardless of the number of animals coming through.
But where it makes a difference is if we have less cats, it doesn't require as much manpower on the part of my staff.
I follow you, and while I agree, yes, that number is gonna come down a little bit, I think by saying 20, it's real easy for folks to figure, oh, let me multiply the number of cats less by $25, and I don't think that's an accurate statement. I think the more accurate is gonna be some incremental number of that I'm talking about, because there's a base number that your overhead is never gonna go below, okay? And in fact, you could bring that number a lot cheaper if you euthanize more cats. Okay, that's just simple economics there, is what I'm getting at. So I don't want to use that 20 to 25 as an exaggeration. That, if we don't euthanize 300 cats, we immediately save, 6,000, 8,000 a year, something like that. So that's all I'm getting at. And I don't expect you to do the math. I just want to make sure that I understand and everybody understands that.
Ms.
We're-
Jane Jarman.
I just wanted to clarify the numbers of 12, state law is 3 days, not 12 days.
Okay,
Not
thank
like
you.
animal cat.
So 3, okay. Yeah, the 12 days is just kind of a max. You know, an average animal may spend 12 days in the shelter, okay? The way we operate is the first day that an animal comes in is a freebie, okay? Then by state law, we have the 3 days, so there you got 4. What we did is we actually extended that minimum to 6. So right now, you're looking at 7 days that we normally keep an animal if it's not reclaimed.
Is that by ordinance or just by policy or something?
Just by our internal policy. By state law, the 3 days comes into play. We just doubled that in an effort to get along with our rescue groups. It was something that they wanted, and it's something that we just, we implemented.
Yes, Dalton.
So are there any instances in which cats would still be euthanized? Are there still instances that would occur, or just completely in the euthanization program?
So if we go out and we trap a colony and we bring the colony in and 2 of the 6 are sick and they have, upper respiratory infections, or they have, anything wrong with them, or they're hurt from trauma, we would obviously mercy use those animals. We're not gonna fix a hurt animal and then take it back. That's just cool. So we would euthanize on those instances, yes.
I'm curious, and I don't expect you to give me the answer to this.
I love this question already.
I'm curious as to what the downside of enacting the ordinance is.
The downside of
Yes.
having the ordinance?
Yes. It's not gonna make it, well, let me say this a little bit. It's already illegal if I own a cat, just let it run outside anyway.
No.
No? If I have a dog, I can't let it run outside,
Well, Wichita has leash law.
right? Why don't we have that for cats?
Have you ever tried to leash a cat?
I've known people that have had cats. that,
It's
they
rare in
never
some
left the house.
instances. They look cute, prancing down the street on a leash. Typically, cats are really not leashed. I mean, I see it. It does happen.
No, but there are cats that never leave a house.
Yeah, they're just indoor cats. They don't prefer to be outside.
I think there ought to be a law that applies to cats like it does to dogs. Now, we may be, it may be such a thing that this ordinance would be a good ordinance, but I think that along with that, it ought to make it a crime just as it is with a dog to let the cat out of the house.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts. I really do. Would you like to come to our meeting on Wednesday? It's at 4 o'clock. But we love input. I mean, because if we don't know what the community members want, we can't help it.
Well, I know why there's not a law for cats like there is for dogs. They're a lot harder to catch.
You bet they are. They're quick.
But if you knew that somebody was letting their cat roam, you could do something about it. If there's no ordinance against it, well, hey, let the cat out.
And there's not. So the question came up a few minutes ago about rabies. I want to put your mind at ease a little bit. Sedgwick County has not had a confirmed case of rabies in a cat since the 1940s. We only had 2 confirmed cases of rabies in Sedgwick County since August of 2018. It was a bat and a skunk. And the only way that you can confirm rabies is by a brain tissue test. So when the animal is brought in, the head is severed and it's sent to Kansas State University. They're one of the only few that can actually test for rabies in the country. So. that'll help a little bit.
Anyone else from the advisory board? Can I see a show of hands, how many people from the public would like to speak?
Oh, man.
I'm gonna give everybody about 2 minutes then. Please state your name and address. Please try not to be repetitive. Please, if someone else has said it, it doesn't need to be repeated, so. We'll just go ahead and start right here.
Oh, you don't have to stand. You're
Yeah, you're.
Mary Cole, 2525 North Somerset, District 6. First, I don't have a colony anymore. I'm down to my last feral cat. It's almost 14 years old. And those of us that are caretakers, I mean, I have had a colony, are passionate, or at least the people I know are passionate about their colony. And the colony helps prevent other cats from coming in. But in an answer to some of the questions, I have a situation right now. About 5 years ago, well, my neighbor had a pit bull that lived to be 18 years old, never was fixed, and he died, and then the neighbor got 2 new pit bulls, and the ordinance in Wichita, they need to be spayed or neutered, chipped, I believe registered with the police department, probably need to have a rabies shot. And I decided I wasn't gonna have this again with, only God knowing how many puppies were born from an unfixed cat. So I confronted my neighbor, said, you need to get the fence, because they jumped the fence to keep your dogs in. And we kind of had a discussion back and forth. But anyway, and he has copies of everything, the ordinance. The female dog that's no longer there had 6 puppies. The dogs have been, when they were outside, they're chained to the fence, less than 10 feet, and often without water. And I have 1 feral cat left, can't touch her. I can't report the pit bulls because he can report my cat. Now, if I lost my feral cat, it would just kill me. So that's an example of why it's a personal example. The ordinance would help me. So horrible care of his pit bulls.
Thank you, Mary. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Becky Jenick. I live at 5520 West 37th Street South, zip code 67215. I brought a few fact sheets for you guys about some numbers. They include primary sources from the Journal of American Veterinary Medical Association. I just like you guys to have a chance to review those. I wanted to describe the difference between a feral cat and a domesticated cat. I don't think this ordinance is talking about creating new areas like you described in your neighborhood. We're not just talking about creating colonies. These are wild animals that are already heavily present in our community. And while we can talk about let's just euthanize them all, well, that's easier said than done, because as Stephanie pointed out, feral cats procreate at an exponential rate. So you go from 2 to 10 to 20 to 30 in a very short amount of time. So what TNR does, it ensures that we're not going to have as the exponential increase in procreation. The other thing it does is it puts the burden of the cost onto the volunteer caregiver, which reduces expenses for our city and increases revenue in the registration and permit process. So when you do the cost analysis, I know you were concerned about the numbers. One thing she said is it costs annually $276,000 to shelter and euthanize these cats, whereas Friends of Felines TNR'd 1,017 cats last year at an average of $10 per cat. That was $10,000 versus 276. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. It has to
Could
do
you
with
stay?
rodents.
Will you stand up and state your name?
Donna Hopper, 3415 Highland.
Okay.
Rodents. Is there any statistics on the unvaccinated rodents that these cats may or may not help keep down as far as in our community?
Okay, so I would like to make just a quick statement. I don't own a cat. I'm definitely allergic to cats. So my cat knowledge is based specifically about TNR and what I've learned over the last 3-4 years. So I don't have any type of research in front of me about the rodents and cat and their relationship and anything about diseases or anything that would make them sick. But I can certainly get that information to you and give you kind of a wide variety of opinions, most likely from veterinarians.
I think it would give another side to it, like what else does this keeping the cats alive do for our community, if you looked at that? Because I believe that around my neighborhood, I have seen a vast drop in the percentage of rodents, mice, those kind of things in your sheds. More now what I see when people let their grass get too tall are rabbits, not mice or rats or what not. So they are of a benefit.
Well, I will tell you.
And she doesn't have a cat.
So I will tell you that Kansas Humane Society does have a program for barn cats. And a lot of people that request to have barn cats are primarily requesting those so they can control the mice populations in their barns.
We got two.
So yeah, I was gonna say, Jeff, do you need some more for the ranch? We can definitely help you out with that. So.
Okay.
Francine Guyette, 525 North Richmond District 6, I believe I'm in.
Sorry, start over.
I moved into the neighborhood I'm in 9 years ago. Did not have any cats. My neighbor was having litter after litter after litter under his shed. He did not own a cat. He did not feed cats. I am ashamed to say that I did help him trap and send to the Humane Society 5 litters and the mothers. I did not know anything about the TNR that I now know about, I'm educated about. We have had no kittens in our neighborhood in 4 years. You want to ask a colony caregiver? I am one. I get no money from nobody. I am on Social Security. I use my money to feed, water, shelter, and vet care every one of the colony. They are all TNR and vaccinated. These cats, I have had 4 homed inside only now. They have been tamed enough. They have been taken into homes. They are never outside. They are fixed. So feral cats, not all, will always hide. They will come to a caregiver that they know to be fed, to be watered. Mine know they get fed at 5:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. and they come to eat. We do not have moles. We do not have gophers. We do not have rats, and I live beside railroad tracks. None of our yards are tore up by these rodents. My neighbor has 9 bird feeders. The cats do not eat his birds. Not once have I found a dead bird. He's not found it. That's all I got to say.
I do love success stories like that. with TNR. Very encouraging.
I have pictures of the cats that have been home.
My name is Maria Acosta. My address is 1913 East Wassel. I became involved with Friends of Felines about 1.5 years ago. I applied for them to come to my neighborhood. I had 10 cats at the time that lived in my neighborhood. And they came, they picked them up in an evening. They brought them all back to me the next day, all fixed, ear-tipped, vaccinated. And at this moment, all 10 are still living, having a good life. 3 of them are, one of them, in fact, has made himself at home with one of my former neighbors. He goes in and out as he pleases. So he basically has himself a home now. 2 of them are where I can pet them, pick them up for about 30 seconds to a minute. The rest of them kind of come and go as they please. But I want you to know that this is very, very important. These cats no longer have babies. I have a baby in my home that's 1 year old that they fixed for me. that his mama was born under my front porch 2 years ago. And then she had him and his brother under the same window last summer. So it's a vicious cycle, and it has got to stop. And this is a good way to do it. They do 45 to 50 cats at a time. I've helped them 6 times now. 45 to 50 cats in one room in a day. And if you divide that in half, female, you figure one of those females is pregnant with 3 babies, you do the math from there. The number just grows that fast. Sickening. But with them doing 45 to 50 cats at a time, that number gets drastically reduced. I've seen it firsthand. That's all I've got.
Sam, you want to say anything about Lucy and May? Sorry, that's my son. I'm putting him on the spot.
I knew I
Two
was.
points, yeah. Who's next? Who's next? Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Tommy Ewert, and I live in District 1, 5820, District 6, 5820 North Legion. I have property in this district. I'm a landlord here, so I represent this as well. I spoke to you all a few months ago about this problem, and the problem has just gotten worse. The ordinance is worse than what we expected it was. I'm also right now the president of Wichita Audubon for a few more weeks. I've been president for 2 years, and Audubon has come out against this proposal. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that, my position on that. The proposal actually comes from a very small group of people, in spite of what you heard in the presentation. It had a very minimum of support at the Animal Services Advisory Board and had very limited input from anybody who was not part of the cat feeders group. The ordinance itself, we provided a list of this reasonable TNR ordinance that you maybe have received copies of that. These are suggestions which we made, which we thought would improve it, but it's just still sitting there. The ordinance came from a group in Maryland. It was a template that they send out to all kinds of groups like this. There's been a movement across the United States to push these kind of ordinances. And as Stephanie said, Oklahoma City, Lawrence, other places have pushed these as well, have passed some. There's no measure of success yet for them because they're all still brand new. I'll tell you a little bit more about how they measure success later. A small group of people here have been feeding feral and outdoor cats for the past 4 or 5 years. We've been hearing from them because they want to keep doing this. This is outside of our current city ordinance. You could say they're part of the problem because the population of feral cats has increased during this time. The 1,000 cats that they neutered last year and the average of 35 per month they're doing this year cannot keep up with the problem that they've created.
Can you wrap it up just a couple seconds?
Okay. Ms. McCurdy and her supporters cannot tell you the number of feral cats in our city will be reduced in 3 to 5 years because studies have shown that that's not true. It takes 10 years or longer before this can happen. And there's no real success stories on this.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Who's next?
So I urge you to vote no on this.
Who's next? No one else? Okay.
My name is Ellen Corner. I'm the District 1 representative for the Animal Control Advisory Board. I urge you to vote no on this ordinance. And there's Stephanie, Ms. McCurdy said it herself. This is not a complete ordinance. This is not a done deal. We tried, the ordinance passed 4-3. The addendums that you would receive probably Friday, 3 of the people, including the veterinarian on the board, voted against this ordinance because it's not complete. We have some things that need to be clarified. First of all, we asked that there be a set limit of cats with colonies in a neighborhood. They did not put that in the ordinance, which means that you can have in a neighborhood 5 caregivers with 8 cats each. It would be 40 cats in your neighborhood. Do you really want 40 cats in your neighborhood? The second thing is that the one and done on the rabies is not correct. The AVMA and the Kansas Department of Health says you have to have a booster after the first shot for them to be covered for 3 years. So just having them up and giving them 1 shot is not going to be enough. They have to have a booster the 2nd year. I'm more than happy to supply you with those with information about how you do rabies vaccinations properly. The third one is the TNR will not work.
It is in our city, in an area of our large size, it is a maintenance program at the very least. I'm not against TNR, but it needs to be followed up with ordinances, like you said, sir. We need to address the owned, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. I did turn off. We need to address the owned cats, and so I hope that soon we'll be able to bring that ordinance up that will address owned cats, either by licensing or mandatory spay or neuter. The ability to enforce the nuisance ordinance is tough. It's not being enforced now. I want you all to know that there are ordinances against cats now. It is called, you feed it, you own it, okay? And you can only have 4 cats with an animal maintenance permit. It's not being enforced now. How are they going to enforce it when they can have 8 cats and there's lots of different colonies if they're not enforcing it?
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Vanessa Christopherson, and I am as well on the Animal Control Board. And I'm in favor of this because if you don't have an ordinance in place, how are you going to get data as to where these cat colonies are? If you put unrealistic expectations in an ordinance, you're going to not only intimidate a cat care coordinator from wanting to say, hey, yes, I'm taking care of this colony. By putting these unrealistic expectations on them, they're not going to be able to afford to get them vaccinated multiple times. At least they're getting it fixed. They're getting identified by the various groups that are willing to go in and volunteer their time. I do volunteer with Friends of Feral Felines during their TMR. They go, if you guys would like to come and see what they do, I really encourage it. It's the last Sunday of every month. They have a location you can come to and see how it really works. Program does work. It does take a little bit of time, but nothing is instantaneous. I know you don't like it, but I'm sorry. So I encourage, if people are not going to be responsible owners, at least let people who want to be responsible and do something actually have an ordinance that will help them do this, since a lot of this is already taking place. Now it's just the ordinance, so there's some teeth to it. So anyways, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Right here.
Judy Handley, I'm at 2415 Maple Street. I was a part of the subcommittee that did a lot of the investigation on TNR. I'm a big TNR supporter. My personal experience led me to TNR. In 2014, I had 18 kittens born in my backyard. I reached out to Friends of Felines because I was like, I can't handle this. With their help, I had the 2 mother cats. That's 2 mother cats, 18 kittens in 9 months. They got them TNR'd. I had several of the kittens TNR'd. The other kittens I adopted out, I found homes for, but I was not going to do it again this year. That was 2014. Today, I have 3 cats in my backyard. TNR does work. He mentioned that there's no studies that say it works. We found millions of studies that work in large communities. Washington, D.C., Atlantic City, New Jersey, Chicago, Illinois, Cook County, Illinois, which is Chicagoland, the whole area. They have showed that in 5 years, they have half the feral cat population. The studies are out there. The Audubon Society did a study many years ago where one of the researchers was found on video poisoning cats. That research should have been totally disqualified. They're still using it. It's not an appropriate study. It does not count. There was a cat killer on the research team. It doesn't work that way. That's not proper research. Thank you.
My name's Carl Harold. I live at 2020 North Alvarado. A couple of questions. You said that it was easy to identify feral cats because you can't get near them, you have to trap them. Why do we keep feral cats for 7 days? I mean, if we know nobody is going to come claim that cat, if the expense is boarding the cat, and we know it's a feral cat, why not euthanize it immediately?
So, may I answer, Jeff? Sorry. So we do know that some animals, when they're brought into the shelter, do exhibit signs of stress And,
So what you're saying is you can't tell? Okay,
yeah,
so that answers
you
that.
can't tell because there's some house cats that would exhibit the same signs as a feral cat.
So when
Yeah.
you say you can identify feral cats, you can't. So the second question,
In the shelter, you can't, but in a, like, if they were outside, you can identify those cats.
so how do you track?
You set a feeding schedule, you get them on the feeding schedule, you put a trap out, you put the feed in the trap, and they go in there to feed, and that's when they're caught.
And once they get in the trap, then you cannot tell the feral?
Oh, no, you can't. When they come in a trap, we know. I mean,
So why is the city keeping these feral cats at least 7 days, and according to your figures, 12 days and $25 a day, when you know it's feral and you know there's no owner coming to get it?
so what do we do if Jeff's Fluffy gets in the trap to feed food when he's outside?
But you just said you can identify feral cats.
If you're trapping a colony, you know it's fair, you know it's there.
Okay, well, that's part I don't understand. Second part, I'm sorry, you're in real estate.
I absolutely am.
Okay.
You wanna buy a house, sell a house, invest in real estate?
Not if it has feral cats, no.
Oh, I
But
thought I'd try.
have you ever sold a house with a colony of cats?
I've sold lots of houses.
With colony of cats?
If they're feral, I typically don't see them because I'm probably not there during their feeding schedule because they're there early morning or evening.
Okay, so the answer would be you don't know.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, if they're being maintained by a colony caregiver, it's not my job to look for the cats.
The other question is, no, I'm gonna get the same answer. Never mind. Thank you.
Okay, who else?
Thank you.
Who else?
Good question. Do you get to all the priority 1 and 2 calls every day? Do you get to all, you get them all accomplished at the end of the day?
We're trying to.
So is there a chance that you're gonna get to priority 3s? Because that's what a nuisance call is, a priority 3. They have a hard time with manpower to get to all the 1s and 2s every day, and that's a 3. So that's not gonna happen. Can you have a cat colony and a HOA?
George, I'm not gonna talk to you again about where I live, and if you continue down this road, Mr. Sigmund's gonna.
Not you, can anyone in an HOA have a cat colony in an HOA?
Let's not do the dialogue, then we'll just.
Okay, all right, so my other point is, if they pass this, and you can have these 8 cats living next door to you, and you don't want cats living next door to you, that you're gonna be making felons out of non-felons. In Wichita, or the state of Kansas, it is against the law, it's a felony to shoot and kill a cat or poison it. And there'll be people, not me, I love cats, I was raised with them, but there'll be people that you'll be making felons out of non-felons. So that's something you need to think about when you vote for this, if you'd ever vote.
Their choice. Who's next? Go ahead, sir.
I just want to say,
We see get your name and address.
my name is Ray Jones. I'm an investor.
Okay.
Okay. I want to say that feeding feral cats, taking care of feral cats helps control population. It does. I've seen it in action. And it works. And I have a feral in my house who has a tipped ear, who has taken 3 years to come into my house. But she's there now. And these cats can be changed if you take time. But I hear people say, we can't do this, or I hear him say that we're gonna make felons out of people. The only felony that they will commit is firing a firearm in town. That's the felony. And that's done if they do it anyway. And it's against the law to kill any animal like that, period.
Know that. Okay, who else? Sam, go ahead, make it quick.
About our cat, they're kind of annoying sometimes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Go ahead, man.
Cheryl Taskinen, Friends of Felines. Wichita has one of the biggest and most successful TNR programs in the city. It's called Cowtown. Shirley Hutchison started TNR and all the cats back in the 1980s then. All those cats that have passed away with elderly issues, they're no longer there. Now they've had to go to the Humane Society and get barn cats because of their rodent problem. So we have a huge example of how it does work.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Jane Mead. My address is 2008 Northwest Ridge Drive. And I am actually a volunteer for Friends of Felines. I have been for several years. But one of the things that I wanted to address is one of the board members said, why wouldn't we just euthanize them rather than fix them if we caught them anyhow? I don't know if you saw the statistics at the beginning of the presentation, but there was an overwhelming number of people who answered the survey who are not in favor of euthanasia for cats, for feral cats. I believe there'd be a huge uproar with the citizens of Wichita if the city started just randomly killing feral cats. I have bird feeders. I love birds, orioles, cardinals, hummingbirds. I have never had a cat in my neighborhood kill a bird at my feeder. I have had hawks kill birds at my feeder. I also don't believe that caregivers will comply with euthanasia. They're not going to come to you and say, hey, yeah, I've got 5 cats, come kill them. They're just not going to do it. A lot of these people are on Social Security or on disability, and they spend the last little bit of money that they can to help these cats and to feed them. There are many studies that show that TNR works. I have an article that I'll provide. Unfortunately, I didn't make copies, but it lists many of them. And there are people, just one last thing about being a volunteer, I answer requests for assistance. I contact them on the liaison. So there are people many times who say, you helped me 6 years ago when I have this many fewer cats now, and my neighbor across the street has, or down the block has had a colony and has never done anything about it. I'm recommending you to them. Or someone says, hey, you trapped and neutered and spayed 5 cats for me. A couple of years ago, a new one came into my colony and I want to get it too. It just works.
Okay, who else?
Hi, my name is Michael Nolan. I live at 2201 East MacArthur. That's District 3. But you know, I've watched this issue, and I'm still not 100% on one side or the other, but I'm mostly leaning against TNR. And the main reason is just the basic numbers. The TNR people said that several years ago that there are 100,000 feral cats in Wichita. If you go and look into TNR, TNR begins to decrease feral cat populations when 70 to 90% of the population has been spayed or neutered. These ladies are spaying and neutering 1,000 cats a year. Now, how long at that rate does it take to get to 70 to 90% of 100,000? Never, never. They need to do 70 to 90,000 TNRs in a 4-month period to start the decrease of the population. That's by their paperwork, their proposals. 70 to 90% of the cats have to be spayed and neutered. So that means in one breeding period, 70 to 90,000 cats have to be spayed and neutered. They're doing it at 1,000 cats a year. Someone needs to explain to me how TNR is going to work at that rate.
Okay. Anyone else? Has everyone got to speak once?
Richard Ruth, I'm in District 3, Green Meadow 7, East Muncie. I've emailed a lot of you over the last several months with information. I won't bore you with any more reiteration on that. I just want to point out that Friends of Feral Felines Fields and the other friends of groups. They do business as a 501c3. But they operate in an ambiguous space. They are unlicensed, but they have managed to insert themselves amongst the licensed animal welfare organizations. And through appeals to their heartstrings, have persuaded them to work with them in carrying out their efforts to return unowned cats to the streets. That's cats that they think are unowned. Efforts that have failed in numbers that far outweigh their successes. Now, you may have noticed that this group and 2 members of the Animal Services Department resolutely refuse to collect meaningful data that will identify a specific cat. I don't care about the number of colonies. I care about the specific cats, and it's important. The data collection defined in this proposal is not meaningful. The reasons for their refusal to unequivocally identify a cat by the use of a $3 microchip are obvious when you take a closer look at the cats that are being trapped and the cats that people are reporting as nuisances or unowned. Sarah McCurdy talks about feral cats. However, there are not so many feral cats in Wichita as there are outdoor cats, owned and unowned, but for the most part tame. There are not 100,000 feral cats in Wichita. There are, however, many thousands of unowned, tame, and semi-feral cats, all of which have kittens that are capable of being rehomed if picked up in time. This lack of purely feral cats is why this group doesn't discriminate in what type of cat is trapped, fixed, and released, either to a location it was found, or as stated in this proposal, somewhere else, or resold. If left only to TNR feral cats, they would be hard-pressed to trap enough cats to make any kind of impression on the public, rescues, or the news media that promotes them, such as KMUW, and the other rescues that promote them, like the Humane Society. Please think about this before you vote on a proposal. Groups of people are setting traps in our communities all across the country. The cats are then returned to citizens or offered for sale by a Humane Society or other licensed rescue. All this is being done with zero oversight, zero accountability, zero transparency. This is exactly the situation that existed in this country prior to the creation of the Animal Welfare Act in 1966.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. I think everybody got to speak with Judy. I'll let you speak one more time just because you served on our board, and I'm going to bring it back to the bad.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to answer a couple of your questions, basically, because they're the ones that triggered in my head. Our statistics actually show that you only need to TNR 55% of the population in order for it to start to decrease. The 1,000 that we talk about is this one group. There is Wichita Animal Action League, there's Beauties and Beasts, there's, and I can't name them all because there's a bunch of other organizations. We don't have their numbers. We only have our numbers. If TNR passes the ordinance, we will do a heck of a lot more than 1,000 a year. We can't grow because of the city ordinances right now. We have to stay small because we can't get the donations that we need. We can't get the grants that we need. And I don't know the last grant that we got denied, but it was huge. And we're talking about $90,000 a year in order to do this. But because of Wichita's ordinances, we can't get that money. We can't get that money. We can't pay vets to come in and do more. We need more. Right now, what we're doing is roughly 100 cats a month. No, actually more than that, 120 a month. K-State, their vet clinic comes down to Wichita to train fourth-year vets on how to do these surgeries. So we're providing a service for not just Wichita, but for vets training. And this is important. This is important, and it does work. And I'm sorry you're not really fully understanding that, but you can't help that.
I'm going to bring it back to the board. Jonathan?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the ordinance in present form.
With a second. Okay, do we want to have any discussion, or do you guys just?
I'd like to make an amendment to that.
Yeah, I'd like to have some more discussion on this.
Okay, so we can, so it like we've already got a amendment, then you're wanting to make a secondary motion. So I guess, do we have a second to that, and then we'll let. A second, or I guess, You're second. Okay. So we have a motion to approve, right, Jonathan?
Yes.
Then we have a second to not approve. So we'll have to vote on the substitute first, but we'll let you guys discuss it. So Jonathan, do you want to speak first since you made the motion?
I think what we have here is a good idea, it's a good plan. We don't want to just go killing cats, but I think that this proposal offers a common sense approach to an issue. And, you know, it helps us to, you know, be consistent with our values. You know, we don't want to be known as a city, as a community that just goes around killing stray animals. So with that, I yield.
Stephanie, do you want?
Well, I vote that make a motion that we deny the amendment that's proposed in front of us because of the cost, the lack of proof that it's really going to reduce the cat population here, the caregivers that it will require to take care of the population. And I think it's not something that's a benefit. I think it's being taken care of naturally in the city at this point. And I think by taking the cats out and euthanizing, we'll have a better result than we will just feeding programs.
Don, did I see your hand up or did you want to?
You didn't see my hand up. You must have heard my brain.
I just felt it.
I must say that I'm on the fence on this. They are already doing TNR, and so I'm just not certain that an ordinance is going to change an awful lot. I wonder about the downside if we do pass it, if there is a downside. There is one thing I do want to point out though, and that is when you gave the numbers of how many people you had responding to your survey, I wrote those down and added them up, and that's 743, and that's not much of a survey. So I don't think it's necessarily representative of the city. So if we have a vote on this, you normally ask this, but I think I will abstain.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, obviously from the, from all of the, people talking about it, I think, TNR is a good thing. I just don't like how the city ordinance is written. What is it to keep all of my neighbors from not having a colony of their own? And then what do we do if, I move into an area and all of a sudden there's already one colony, and then somebody says, oh, well, I can have 8 more. What are my protections? And what if I already have a cat and there's already a colony, and so we move to the colony? I guess I don't see that in there. Then I'm wondering, what do we do? Because we pass this ordinance, and then, they're like, well, I'm abiding by the ordinance because I can have 8 cats, and then my neighbor can have 8 cats, and the next neighbor can have 8 cats, and then, if I'm living someplace and they just start showing up, I guess that's the only issue that I'm having with this.
Jeff, I have a question for you.
Okay.
May I answer a couple of questions that were addressed?
I kind of just want them to
Okay.
hear from them.
I just didn't get to do my closing remarks.
As you know, I sit on the control, and I appreciate it. I think that the ordinance that we presented to the city council, the one that's before us tonight, is more like building a house and leaving half of it. It doesn't address the issues of the own cats that get dumped. Kind of like Don was talking about, you got to rescue your dogs. Cats are a disposable pet for most people. All these feral cats, they come from somewhere. And mostly it's dumped cats. And I believe that I've seen the studies by the Friends of Feline type groups that support that it is dumped cats, that's where these come from. I don't think that this ordinance should be pushed through. I think it's gonna cause more conflict to go back and fix the problem once it's voted on and voted in, than it is to fix the problem and present it to the city as a fix.
Anyone else? Stephanie, can you wrap it up in 2 minutes?
I actually can. So, as I said when I first started, that this ordinance is not perfect. We know that. We want input. We want to make this successful. I don't disagree with some of these people that have talked to you today about adding structure to the ordinance. I think it's a good thing. What I have to present to you is exactly what the board voted on. But if we go forward today and you approve, this gives the opportunity for city council to give feedback and to be able to add to the ordinance to make it better. Because without it, TNR, yeah, it happens, but it happens at such a minimal rate. Our impact could be so much greater. So if we go forward today, it's an opportunity to add language, to incorporate a lot of what the confusion may be, and to be able to make it better. That's it.
So we have a motion by Stephanie to deny the city ordinance for the proposal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. You raise your hand, so. Opposed? The motion tonight. I realize this is not an easy decision, and I know the city council will have a lot of debate about this, so I appreciate everybody coming in here and sharing your views. Thanks, guys.
I got one favor to ask though, and that is that we can call in and have people punished that dump their cats if we can identify and know exactly who's dumping it. Because right now, we can't do it. No, there's no ordinance. They sell it, there's nothing they can do.
Okay.
Be gone for the month of in sunny California, in the desert, for the military, so it's not gonna be fun. It's gonna be absolutely miserable. Yeah, we got the 28 days of desert training. So, no showers, living on the ground. Thank you for your support. Thank goodness they're still paying us. So I'll be gone for that one day. So I know you'll be thinking about me. So. I'll be praying for you, I promise. Yeah.
Enjoy training.
Yes, yes. Yeah, right. So, in the desert, it's just north of Barstow. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
Kim stole a little bit of the thunder on Prairie Farm, which you talked about it there, but I just wanted real quick to thank Jeff here at the board for everything on Pony Prairie Park. None of you have had a chance to go out and see what it used to be versus what it is now. And as contentious as even this seems right now, the contentiousness of that battle that has lasted 4 years over Pawnee Prairie Park has been real ugly. And I just, Jeff, thank you for taking that on, because I think you've seen it already, how many more people have interest and are using that park. It was such an underutilized, neglected space, and it needed people using it to realize what it needed. There's a playground over there now. There's people going through the park, of course not now because it's full of water. But thank you, Jeff, for all that. Love, it's great. So come on out and see Pawnee Prairie Park.
Yeah.
Bring your bike.
A lot more people.
Bring your, yeah, exactly.
I'd like to just to second that as well.
Well done. Just a great asset to the West Wichita community. That's, you know, we got, what, 20,000 houses, you said, or 20,000 families out in that area that are really going to benefit.
I appreciate that, guys. And I appreciate, Rebecca, she's not here tonight. She rode a bicycle in from Goddard with a crew. But the whole ideal behind that, I started on 4 years ago, I just wanted, there's nothing west over there. And I just wanted something that the folks could utilize over there. And the parking lots are full. And, it was even as nasty as the morning before. There would be people, a lot of graffiti with my name and painted nasty stuff all over the parking. Took care of it, wiped it out, even signage and stuff that was vandalized, so hopefully that stuff will end now. Hopefully everybody, I want everybody to get out and enjoy that park, whether you're on a bike, horse, a walker, wheelchair, walking, whatever.
Please understand the right of way rules.
Yes, it's pretty clear.
Please understand the right of way.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just want to comment on the park too. Me and my wife went to the trails there, we walked across the trail, we were there for an hour and a half, got lost a little bit, but.
It's great that you can get lost in
Yeah,
our city though,
I
right?
didn't see a jet go by, but I'm still
Exactly,
lost.
it's an amazing place, you can go get lost in it, you're still in the
And
middle
one
of the
thing that my wife wanted me to suggest was Snell crossing sign, we saw lost smashing the snails.
Oh, really?
Sidewalks.
Okay.
We were joking, but it was pretty exciting, but no, it was really nice.
Has anybody been over there with the rains? 'Cause I'm wondering how the overflow bridge is.
I don't know, I was gonna check it out, when I drove over.
Because it used to be any kind of rain. you
Yeah,
didn't get the
no, I saw the
three-quarter.
update that the geological survey thing there is already at 15 or 16 feet. The bike park, it floods the bike park at 14 feet, so.
Maybe for the summer, Dad, so Hartman's can give us a water review.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
That's true, yeah, you guys are.
We're right there.
You're right there.
We're right there. But we have seen a lot more traffic over there.
And it's a good element.
It is.
Stephanie, you were
It's
the one that told me a
families.
few years ago, people didn't feel safe going over there.
Right, it's definitely
That west
changed.
lot now is full of people,
Right.
like, it's fantastic.
Right, it's definitely made a difference. Good job.
All right. Nothing else? Go ahead, Tom.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thanks, everybody, for coming out.